Welcome back to another episode of the Budget Overland Podcast. I am your host, Benji, and today's episode is actually pretty cool compared to the last few I've had because I've had technical difficulties and I keep mispronouncing people's names, and I apologize. So thanks for returning to all the listeners out there in listening land. Today's episode is pretty cool. I've talked to this guy a couple months ago, met him down in Oklahoma for the Okie Overland swap meet. We went camping, I believe, that Saturday evening where it was hotter than the devil's armpit, and so was the water. But I'm done complaining about that trip, I think. So anyway, Cody from Red Dirt Taco on Instagram, he wrapped up a phenomenal dream trip of most of ours. He's from, let's just say, central Oklahoma, drove all the way up to Alaska, and all the way back. He allotted himself 32 days and over 14,000 miles. His vehicle of choice for this trip was a third-gen Tacoma, fully decked out and loaded. We'll get into his build specs and all that, and how he planned for this trip, and pros and cons about it, things he learned and takeaways, and just kind of fill us all in on a really long trip like this, because I know for a fact I would do this trip in a heartbeat if I was allowed to and able to. And so, yeah, without further ado, Mr. Cody Allenbaugh, how are you, sir?
Doing pretty good. How are you, Benji?
Good, man. Appreciate you hopping on here. I was twisting your arm that one night at camp, just trying to get you to come on the show, but we're here now, so that's all that matters.
Absolutely.
So we were hanging out at the Okie Overland swap meet, kind of picked up a little bit here and there, and someone's like, yeah, that dude just got back from a month-long trip to Alaska and back and all this stuff. So I was just kind of drooling over that, came up to you, bombarded you with questions. Then I think around that campfire at night, everybody was kind of asking you these same questions. And so, yeah, let's just get it all out there, and I think this is going to be a fun episode. So, yeah, man, again, thanks for coming on and sharing the story with us. So let's go back to the genesis of all this. When did Cody get started in the off-road, overland, or even camping outdoors? When did you start the outdoorsy kind of lifestyle and to where it evolved to where you're overlanding now?
Well, I guess I've always been kind of an outdoors person and camping here and there all of my life, but it didn't become the quote unquote overlanding lifestyle for me until about 2020. So not very long that I've been off-roading and traveling around the country, mostly the western part of the U.S. But I started out with car camping and overlanding actually out of a Honda Civic.
Oh, nice.
Uh, me and my daughter would travel around from Oklahoma all the way to California and everything in between, hiking, and uh, kind of evolved into more off-road whenever I had trouble on some trips getting my Honda to some of the trailheads, and that would extend our hike by a little ways because we'd have to park up the road or something, or risk tearing the vehicle up trying to get into a trailhead where we wanted to hike. And yeah, switched over to the third gen Tacoma.
So going from the Civic, how many years or how long did you guys use the Civic as your vehicle platform?
Well, I really used that from just in 2019 on into 2020, and later in 2020 or early 2021. I don't recall exactly when is when I switched over to the Tacoma. So it was just a year, a little over, that we were really doing that out of the Honda very
So
much.
did you quickly recognize that, hey, this is really fun and I need a more capable vehicle? Is that kind of how you led to a truck, or how did you guys make that decision?
Well, I'm kind of a truck guy. I had the car to commute back and forth to work, and I have a truck and have always had a well, it's always for quite a while I've had a Chevy Silverado, but it's the two-wheel drive and it's just a truck, just to use to get around everywhere and use to move stuff around. Just a truck, nothing special. Hadn't done anything to it, but we were actually on a trip in Colorado, and we were in, I don't remember exactly where, somewhere in southwestern Colorado, whenever I really decided that I'm going to have to get something more capable if we're going to continue to do this. Camping out of the car, you're kind of limited in a lot of spots you can get to, trying to get more secluded camping spots.
For sure.
And uh, I was in Colorado, and if you're in Colorado for very long, you look around and all you see is Toyotas. They're
Hmm.
they're all over the place. So I just kind of considered that a sign, and
It's a it's a
actually,
glorious sight. It's a glorious sight to
yeah,
behold.
yes. So like I said, I considered that a sign, and actually on our way home from that trip, I traded my Honda in for Tacoma before I even
Okay.
made it home.
Heck yeah.
Stopped by a dealership to test drive one to see if it was something I was going to like. I'd never even driven a Tacoma,
Wow.
and I'd been doing a little bit of research while we were out on the road, and for a few days, I just kind of settled on the Tacoma, and now I've dove in head first and went from
Yeah.
a stock Tacoma to what it is today.
All right. So let's take this next part a little slow. I know not most of the listeners, but we could say most listeners are probably Toyota fans. Did Jeep ever cross your mind as an
No,
option?
not for me.
Okay.
Not for me. No,
So you
I'm not a fan of them. It's not any particular thing. It's just
yeah.
I I worked for Chrysler for a while as a mechanic, and I've kind of stayed away from all of their items. I guess just kind of you just get tired of seeing them and just
Yeah.
don't ever
No, that's fair.
want to
That's
have one.
fair. So, did you look at a Forerunner or any other platform, or were you just coming from a truck? You wanted a truck.
Uh, no, I never looked at a Forerunner. It was always the truck was what I had in mind.
Cool.
Uh, I since then I have looked at Forerunners and considered making a change. And my wife, she absolutely loves the Forerunners, and
Yeah.
she wants to trade her car in eventually for a Forerunner.
Cool. Well, that'd work out. Win-win situation.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what I was thinking. I was like, you know what, having another platform to be able to
Oh, that'd be
travel
awesome.
with
Yeah.
rather than her Camry would be
Yeah.
excellent.
We were, my wife and I were kind of talking about that because a lot of people know, like, I've got a 23-year-old third gen Toyota 4Runner, which I've spent a ton of hours and money on, with upgrading parts or replacing bushings and all this stuff to where it's fairly reliable up until a couple months ago where I've been finding or trying to chase these little shaking vibration gremlins, and I think I figured it out after months of trial and error. But nonetheless, me and my wife were talking about she's got a Cherokee, and she's also got a like an Acura. The Acura is more like a go to work, go to church kind of vehicle, and then her Jeep's kind of just a higher mileage. It's got some scratches and stuff. But we were thinking about, man, it'd be nice if we just sold that or sold both and just put that money towards like a nice or nicer, traveler. Not necessarily an overland buggy, although we could probably do that. It'd just be more something to where it's like you said, like another platform that doesn't have, it's not fully loaded, but it's very capable to still go to those fun places and camp and explore. That's more modern for us, I guess. But didn't mean to hijack your thing there. If you
No, no, you're
feel
fine.
like we've got time to kind of go through the build, I say that loosely. I've seen your rig and it is decked out. But is it a TRD Pro or TRD Off Road? Was it an SR5? What was it? And then kind of walk us through kind of mods or different things you changed on the vehicle.
Well, it started as a TRD off-road. I had looked at the Pro, but I knew that one of the biggest draws to the Pro was the suspension, and I knew that I would probably be changing the suspension out at some point for something better than the Pro anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
I went with the TRD off-road, and yeah, my very first thing was tires, but I got quite a bit of use out of the even the factory tires on it. I took it completely stock and made a trip through. through Colorado and hit a lot of the mountain passes in the San Juans uh, and ripped the terrible factory predator
Pre-
steps off of
yeah.
it on Mineral Creek, just outside of Ouray, and then took it. We drove all the way to California and done the Mojave Road Trail across the Mojave with it, and I found a few weak spots in it, that things that I wanted to change. One of them being tires. So I put a little more aggressive tire on it, Goodyear Duratrax, and I didn't go up much in size. I went from the factory 31s to 32,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, then I kind of let the trail and things that happened on the road dictate exactly what I wanted to do next to it. And one of the things in Mojave was going through whoops. Some of them were actually deep enough on the trail that my front bumper was hitting. I didn't have enough approach angle.
Mm.
So then I knew it was time for a lift, and uh, since the factory front bumper was what was hitting, I decided I better do a high clearance front bumper on it. So done a full steel uh, RCI RCI bumper, and for the lift I went with Bilstein 6112s in the front, 5160s in the rear, and uh, the Icon spring pack in the rear to get the stance where I wanted it, but still have adjustability with the rear ride height, since I knew that I would be adding more. And eventually ended up uh, getting well. Let's see, what would my next item that I put on be? It was probably the winch. I went without a winch for quite a while, because going up into Colorado, I try to go up to Colorado 4, 5, 6 times a year, do a few weekend trips and a few week long or so trips to Colorado. And you don't need a winch a lot in the mountains in Colorado, but I ended up over your direction, northern Arkansas, stuck in the middle of the trail for about 7 hours.
Oh gosh.
I was buried in a mud hole by
Mm.
myself, no way to get out, and actually had water and mud flowing into the vehicle because the passenger side was underwater.
Man.
So after I got out of that and had to gut the interior of my truck, I decided that it was time for a winch, because I would have been out within about 10 minutes if I'd have had one.
That's so frustrating.
But instead, I ended up walking up the road, and that's an interesting story in itself, is walking down the road looking for someone to help you in remote places in Arkansas.
Yeah.
But then to get prepared for the Alaska trip, because I was planning that for nearly a year. I knew there were some things that I wanted, and I wanted a rooftop tent. I'd been camping out of a ground tent, which worked fine. But when I knew I was going to be spending 30 days on the road and in a tent uh, every night, uh, especially with the weather in northern Canada and Alaska, it rains quite a bit during the summer. During the time I was going, I went from the middle of June to the middle of July. Rooftop tent seemed to be the best idea for camping, and I decided to go with something that was fairly quick to set up. So stopped by the guys over to Okie Overland, talked with them for a little bit, and they happened to have a Lightner bed rack in stock that they had ordered in for someone else and had been sitting there for a while, so they made me a killer deal on it. And I bought a 23-0 Kabari wedge style rooftop tent, and I absolutely love it. That thing, from the time I hit the kill switch on the truck to the time I am in the tent ready to lay down, I can I can be in 60 seconds. I mean,
That's insane.
it's great to be able to do that and tear down.
Mm-hmm.
I'm I'm not a big guy for setting up camp and a campfire every night, especially whenever I'm solo like that. And no one likes sitting around a campfire by themselves, talking to themselves. So mo most of my camps were fairly simple. Uh, boondocking, just wherever I could find that was a decent, safe place to set up for the night. So the rooftop tent with the quick setup worked great for me.
Cool. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. So we found, out how you got to your platform, kind of, what your rig consists of. Let's talk about now coming up with your trip, like planning it, your destinations, allotting your time, all this stuff. Um, Obviously, like you said, you take multiple trips out whenever you can. So like this is a huge trip for you, correct? Like going to Alaska is a big trip.
Yeah. I'm probably not going to get the opportunity to take a month off of work all that often to be able to do something like this. So I wanted to be able to get the most out of it that I could.
Yeah. Can you talk us through kind of the beginning planning stages for you? Like, kind of like, was it months in advance, or was it like weeks, or was it years in advance?
Um, about a year before I kind of come up with the idea that I'd like to go to Alaska. I didn't know exactly when at that time, and that was where things started for me first, was figuring out what time of the year I wanted to go and would be able to go. Um Obviously, crossing Canada and going into Alaska and to be able to go a lot of the places I wanted to go, I was probably going to be going in spring, summer, early fall. So I figured out what would be the best time weather-wise to where I would be able to get to every place, and kind of landed on the middle of summer, and just had to pick some dates, get pretty close anyway to the dates that I wanted to go. That worked into my schedule, but the weather was also good up north. Um, and then I started researching the area, and a lot of that's just Google. Uh, I got a book called The Milepost. Uh, it's a book that kind of covers trips from the lower 48 to Alaska and back. Gives multiple routes, and it's a pretty good sized book, a couple hundred pages of a lot of information about Alaska and Canada, and trip planning, and just a lot of the places, things to go see and do while you're there and along the way. Uh, but yeah, I basically started with what time of the year I wanted to go, and then started working out a little bit of details of how long I could spend, how long I wanted to spend in each place. And my original idea was I'm going to spend a month, so I'm going to take about a week going up, a couple weeks in Alaska, and a week coming back. But after I got a little bit deeper into it, exactly how long it was going to take to drive places and how much there actually was to see in Canada, I ended up extending my time on the way up in Canada a little bit, because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, making it across Canada to Alaska in a week that's moving pretty quick. I
Mm-hmm.
found out it looks small on the map, but
Out
you're
there on
you're
the
talking about, yeah, going 4,000 miles from home. It's a long drive.
yeah. So were you? So if you're planning like a week up there, a week or 2 weeks, hanging out in Alaska, and then a week back, roughly, were you trying to cover miles or days? What was your goal for like each day? What was the drive for you to keep pushing? I guess what were the goal to at each day?
In the beginning, in what I call the boring areas, I guess, especially whenever you're trying to book it across Kansas, Nebraska. What I wanted to cover was 800 miles a day, and there's a lot of areas in Canada too where you really want to cover as much ground quickly as you can, because there's just not much to see. You're going across the plains, and I didn't want to spend that much time in the lower 48, because this trip was more about Canada and Alaska, something that I won't get to do, uh, every year. Where anything from here to Canada, I can squeeze those trips in just about any year. So my big days were 800 miles, and I put in quite a few of those because I believe over the course of it, I averaged somewhere around 500 miles a day. I haven't even put it to the calculator to see exactly what it was, but yeah, my big days were 800, but there were days where I may only end up camping 30, 40, 50 miles from where I camped the night before. It just depended on what there was to see in the area and to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I did leave it kind of open-ended. I didn't have any place to be at any particular time except back home to return to work by a certain day at the end of it. So uh, I I did as much research about the uh, things to do and see and things I did want to go to along the way as I could, but I didn't I didn't make any reservations. I didn't hold myself to any particular date so that if I did want to change my plans and go somewhere else or skip something, uh, I was open to that.
So whenever you made it to quote unquote Alaska, were you like, "Yay, I'm here," or did you already have something planned out for Alaska, like the Arctic or anything like that? Any highlights you wanted to check off your list?
Yeah, absolutely. I did have my route planned. Uh, of course, I did stray from that from time to time, but uh, once I got to Alaska, the first thing I wanted to do was head all the way north to Dead Horse up the Dalton
Mm-hmm.
Highway.
How was that experience once you reached it? I've seen pictures. I've not been there, so I've seen pictures. And once you kind of reach that area, everybody slaps a sticker on the wall and all that stuff. Like, how surreal was that for you, or was it just kind of like a
It
lot to take
it
in?
it was an accomplishment, but man, that
Yeah,
road is just it's a slog. Uh,
yeah.
and I just a couple of days before that, I had went up the Dempster Highway in Canada, all the way up to Inuvik and then up to Tuktoyaktuk to the Arctic Ocean, and that. Those roads are like the Dempster and the Dalton. The Dempster's a little bit longer than the Dalton, but they're both around 450 miles one way, and it is just
Mm-hmm.
it's just a dead end road. You get to the end of it, you see, on the Dempster, Tuktoyaktuk, at the end of it, you turn around and drive 450 miles back. There,
Mm-hmm.
it's they call them highways, but they're gravel roads. They're maintained
Yeah.
gravel roads. It's like a lot of Forest Service roads as far as maintenance and condition, but normally on the forest roads down here, we don't have to deal with frost heaves that
Yeah.
tear the road up like they do up there. But the north is just it's a different animal. It's it is it's humbling to get out in those remote places and know that you are 200 miles from the next fuel, the next anything. There's quite often no electricity, no water or anything for hundreds of miles on some of those roads. And but you I don't know. It's you you get to see a lot of things that you definitely don't see down here in the lower 48. Seeing just the, the mountains, rivers, the swampy tundra a little further north. It wasn't since I was in summer, it wasn't covered in snow and ice, but there's still snow and ice that are in certain places year round.
Yeah, man, that would just be a wild trip. It'd be fun if you could take off and just do a whole summer up there. 4 months even. That'd be awesome. And
Oh, absolutely. And you could. Alaska is very big, but there's not a lot of roads. There's not a lot uh, infrastructure in a lot of places, but you dig into it and you find a lot of really neat things. Some of the places that I did go to, like McCarthy Kennecott down in southern Alaska. I wasn't planning on going there, but I saw this little road on the map that was just a dead end road that went out to a little place, and I done a little bit more research into it while I was on the road, and decided to go out to it, and it was great. You get out to the end of the road, and you have to walk across a footbridge to walk into the town. Locals
Oh
can drive
wow.
into the town, but they don't allow a lot of outside traffic so that tourists aren't
Hmm.
driving around this small town that has like three roads, and I
What
don't even know if they had stop signs in this town.
what was the town called again?
Uh, it's McCarthy, Alaska.
Like I think I've heard of that. It looks super run down, right? Like overgrown almost. Like is it just like
Yeah,
real
there
okay, real
there's
secluded?
there's very few houses or buildings in the town.
So
The old Kennecott mine, it's actually it's all in the Wrangell St. Elias National Park,
mm,
and the old Kennecott mine is out there, and it's now run by the National Park Service as a tourist attraction. But
very cool.
you either have to hike out to it, or you take a shuttle out to the Kennecott mines from the town of McCarthy. But McCarthy is really cool. It's got a little saloon there, and during the summer they have live music like every night, and it is, I don't know, it's just kind of a a small party. It was almost like a
Yeah.
hangout around the campfire like we have down here whenever we got
Yeah.
15, 20 people around. It was very chill, and it was a lot of fun.
Very cool. I like those. I like those little stories, and especially like experiencing. It's a different culture, no less, because those people are out there in the middle of nowhere, pretty much. They're cut off from a lot of things that we take for granted, for sure, down here in the 48. But just experiencing that, I think that would be just fun in and of itself. Around locals and stuff like that.
Yeah, and by that point in my trip, again, I was on a solo trip, and I'd been out by myself for quite a while, so it was actually good to hang out with some people for a little while, and
Get some
get
socializing.
get to talk, and realize I still knew how to use my voice. And
Chipmunks were tired of talking to you.
yeah, you can only talk to yourself so much on the road.
So let's talk about some other just random things. I know a lot of people have asked questions on Budge Overland Facebook group, and we'll read those off towards the end here a little bit. But as far as like planning for your fuel, your food, and your hygiene, as far as showers and all that stuff go, and just taking care of yourself, um, how did that play out? Versus when you started and once you kind of got your rhythm going. Like, can you kind of share us and walk us through kind of what you did?
Well, the fuel, I started out, obviously in the lower 48, and it's easy to find fuel down here. If I can go 300 miles in my truck on a full tank, I can drive past dozens of gas stations without having to fill up or worrying about fuel. Once I got a little further into Canada, I realized that there's not a lot of people in Canada. There are less people in all of Canada than there are in California. Yeah, California alone has more people than the entire country of Canada, and it shows with their gas stations.
Mm,
They are few and far between in some places. So I'd prepared for that somewhat ahead of time by having two jerry cans mounted in the truck, so that I did have 10 extra gallons of fuel. And I also quickly learned, if you are anywhere near a half of a tank of gas, do not pass a gas station in Canada if it's open. Uh, so many of their gas stations in Canada, and it changed almost instantly when I got into Alaska, changed back to something I'm familiar with, but so many of their gas stations are very old. There's no pay at the pump. Uh, you you generally pump your gas, then go in and pay for it. Uh, but most of them also close about 6 p.m., and they close the station down and go home. And if you're trying to put a lot of miles in and drive late into the night, you need to fill up early in the afternoon and make sure you do have plenty of fuel on me. Uh, I did. I realized that having about 400 miles of range is something that anyone uh, doing a lot of the things that I've done in Canada and Alaska is advisable to have
Mm.
at least 400 miles, and don't go past a gas station if you're at about a half a tank. Um, I think you also asked about planning for hygiene
Yeah,
and
and your
uh,
food.
yeah, and the food. I'm pretty simple on food. Uh, I don't. I'm not a big foodie. Whenever I'm on the road, it's kind of just uh, calories and nutrition, just what I need. Try not to snack a whole lot on the road, so I don't have a bunch of that with me, so that I don't come out of the trip weighing 300 pounds.
14,000 mile road trip comes back 100 pounds heavier. What happened?
Yeah, yeah. I didn't take a lot of clothes with me, and I still need them all to fit by the end of it. So, no, honestly, what I do for a lot of my food on the road like that is I just have wraps. I buy lunch meat, uh, some lettuce, cheese. Uh, always take some sriracha with me. Love my sriracha sauce on everything. Uh, and have a lot of wraps. I did have some of the uh, peak refuel freeze-dried meals that I'd eat every once in a while, and then I would stop a few times to grab something to eat. Sometimes it was just as simple as fast food, just stop in at an Arby's or something and get something because I feel like I've had too many turkey wraps or turkey sandwiches, or
Yeah.
like we talked about when I was in McCarthy, they had a little restaurant that was it was a fairly nice place, and probably more expensive than I thought it was or intended whenever I went in, because a single meal for just myself was $60 by the time I got out. But I figured I was okay to treat myself to at least one steak meal on the trip,
Absolutely.
and then just carrying my water. At the time, I had the 8-gallon water port that I carried on board, and most of the time I would just uh, fill that from a clean, safe water source, and then I would drink out of that. And as far as hygiene, of course, the water port came in handy for that, with being able to take a quick shower. A lot of times it was cool, not necessarily cold, but a lot of times it was cool, so it was a very quick shower just to quickly clean off. But about every 3 days, I would try to stop in at a campground or uh, Love's gas station, a truck stop where I could actually get a shower and clean up, and then wash my clothes, because I didn't take much clothes with me. I didn't want that much to keep up with, and I knew that at least once a week I would be able to wash everything. So I had like two pair of jeans, two pair of shorts, and about 4 or 5 shirts, and a hoodie and rain jacket, windbreaker. But when you're in northern Canada and Alaska, the absolute most important item of clothing is a bug net to put over your head. The mosquitoes are awful.
Man, watching people like on YouTube or whatever, even people out doing their documentary stuff, even with the bug net on, it just looks miserable. Like the amount of mosquitoes and bugs there are, it's just like, no thanks. To a certain
Well,
point, it comes with the territory.
that
So,
I would I would put a ball cap on, put the bug net over that so that the bill of the cap actually held it back off of my face, because they would bite you through the net.
hmm
I'd put a windbreaker on, pull the hood on the windbreaker over the top of my head, put gloves on, had jeans on, or pants, and that would happen anytime I was going to get out of the vehicle.
wow.
Whenever you're in whenever you're in a town, it's not quite as bad. But if if I were just to pull over alongside a road to uh, just to use the restroom, it was it was awful. Just as soon as
Mm.
you get out, they swarm you and they do not go away, and they absolutely cover you. Uh, even even urinating was fun because you do not want any
Oh
extra
gosh.
exposed skin.
So
Yeah.
are they? So if you had bug spray, is there any amount of DEET that would help knock them down, or not really? Are they just kind of too
It
much?
would
Too
it would help, but
not.
I didn't take any bug spray with me at all, and I never got any or used any the entire time. I'm not a big fan of putting the bug spray on my skin. I I don't like the smell of it. I don't like any extra chemicals if I can keep from it. But people that I saw and hung out with from time to time would have it and they would put it on, but just from looking at them, they had just as many mosquitoes on and around them as
Yeah.
I did me.
Oh wow. Okay. I'm not really big into bugs and stuff, but I'm not saying I would not ever go on this trip. So with that being
I
said.
I became very proficient at setting up my tent quickly without getting extra mosquitoes into it
I'm
and
sure
getting
that
in.
came in handy whenever you have a like a really quick deploying, shelter like that. That would definitely
Yeah,
come in handy. I couldn't imagine
ab
spending 10, 15 minutes out there doing that.
no, no. If I'd have had the ground tent, just setting that up and taking minutes to do that, the longer you were out, the more mosquitoes gather in the area. It was
Oh
Yeah,
gosh.
it was a big part of it, but honestly, after a few days of learning how to deal with it, it didn't stop me from doing anything.
All right, man. Before we get into these questions, is there anything that you took with you that or let me rephrase it. Let me say, is there things that you planned on taking that you took that you absolutely used in, or did you have stuff that you took that you're like, why'd I bring that?
Um,
Or was
there
there a
are
heavy, or there were more, or a more amount of one thing versus the others? I don't know how I'm wording this, but hopefully you're getting it.
now I'd done quite a bit of research into exactly what was needed, and some people say you need two spare tires, or some people say you only need one. Well, I put new tires on right before the trip. So I just went with one spare tire and never needed it, but obviously that's not something I'm ever going to decide to leave at home.
Good.
But like I said, I'd done some research into things that other people had done and watched lots of YouTube videos so that I could prepare myself and uh, have everything I needed, not have to buy anything while I was on the road to fill a weak spot in my loadout. But honestly, having having the experience, knowing now what I didn't know then, I probably would not have brought my diesel heater with me.
Mm.
I used it 3 or 4 times, and it was I honestly only got down to around 25 degrees was about the coldest at night, and I would have been just fine with my quilts and blanket in my tent those times anyway. I I don't know. There are a few things that I would add that I definitely would add and like to take next time. Uh, but it's nothing major. A lot of it's just clothing with having thicker jeans, as I found mosquitoes can bite through your pants and your shirt very easily, even through thinner jeans
Mm.
uh, up there. But no, there's not really anything that I brought that I had wished I had left, uh,
Mm.
besides, like I said, maybe the diesel heater.
Very good. Do you have a list, a physical list that you went off of? I mean, I'm sure you did, but is there something that we could probably share with the community of kind of what you packed, or it's okay if there's not?
No, I really don't have that. I kind of have a spot for everything in my truck, and I just before any trip, I just go through and make sure that I do have some of those things in.
Cool.
Obviously, I'm adding uh, different things depending on what the environment I'm going into is. But for Alaska, since I was going through, uh, you know, mountains, desert,
Yeah.
plains, everything, I took most of the items that I normally take on any of my trips, whether I'm going into the desert or uh, northern Colorado in fall.
Yeah. So I think that I mean you're an experienced traveler, and I think that's probably gonna depend on your experience. So I guess that's a tricky question for a lot. So yeah, answers that. Well, let's get into some of these Facebook questions. They might make sense, they might not, but I posted here an hour before our recording. I said, if you were planning a long trip from central United States all the way to Alaska for an overland trip, what questions would you ask someone who's completed that trip? So we had about 29 comments on here. We'll just go through, touch on a couple of them. If you want to pass, just say pass or whatever. This one's from Daniel Dolan. Of all the things you took with you, what wouldn't you bother to take next time? And he says he's got a
Uh,
Land Rover and he's really, he's mindful of his small platform.
yeah, yeah. Well, having a Toyota, I'm mindful. A Toyota Tacoma, I'm kind of mindful of things that take up extra space and especially extra weight. Um, of the things, I think it's probably kind of what we already covered. I probably wouldn't take the
Yeah,
diesel heater and the extra diesel.
yeah. So everything else
Yeah,
you felt
that's
was efficient because it's already your load-in kind of routine, and you kind of adjusted it for the colder weather and things like that,
yeah.
right?
The the only other thing that I had that I really didn't use would be radio. I hardly I listened on my radio, just ham radio and GMRS.
Oh, you had a
But
ham? Did you pick up anything with your ham radio, like
well,
local to you?
mostly I'm scanning a few different common frequencies and calling frequencies, but I'm scanning all the GMRS and MERS frequencies as well
Hmm.
while I'm on the road. That way I can. Sometimes you run into some things and you get some little free entertainment on the road while you're listening to people.
Yeah.
That reminds me of a story. Whenever I was going across Canada, I was kind of bored in a spot that there wasn't much around, and I caught it was two older couples that were both driving large pusher RVs. They were talking back and forth about some place they were going to stop to go hike that they had heard about it from a local at a gas station a little ways back, but they were telling which mile marker it was at, and I realized that they're traveling pretty close with me, and I pulled over and gone ahead and went for a hike in that spot. I thought it might
Oh,
be a little
nice.
creepy to tell them that they I was listening in on on their conversation, and
We've
they're the
been
ones that
expecting
brought me
you.
there. Yeah, so shortly after I pulled in, I saw them rolling in. I was like, oh, there they are.
Suckers.
I better not scare them. They'll jump back in their RV and leave.
That's actually really cool, man. That's funny. All right, here's another question from Jake Musgrave. Best places to eat in each state. He wants to know specifically where's the best place you eat in each state. And you could answer this with a grain of
Well,
salt if you want.
I didn't I didn't go out to eat a lot or stop at any great places. And again, like I said, I'm not much of a foodie when I'm on the road, but the I honestly don't remember the name of the place that I ate in McCarthy, Alaska. I'd have to look at it to look back at it to see. It is one of the two places that you can eat in
Okay.
McCarthy.
I was going to say there's probably only one or two options.
Yeah,
but
there are two places, and yeah, there's not
that's
much else to
awesome.
eat for about 100 miles
So is that more like
around
a
that.
home cooking? What would you, or was it like a real fancy place? What kind of style was it? Was it bar food?
You know, I thought it was going to be more like a cafe that you just stop in at and get some home style food or something. But I walked in and it was a very fancy place. They did ask me what kind of wine I wanted with the meal to begin with, and uh, I I declined the wine, especially after I saw some of the prices. But
Oh gosh.
when you're
Was
eating when you're eating a $60 meal for one person, it's
yeah.
in a small town in Alaska. That's pretty fancy for them. It was
Yeah.
pretty gourmet, a little higher class than I normally eat, but it was a great meal.
Was there a dress code? Did you walk in, they look at you like, "Who's this traveler?"
No, it was not a big place, and I was dressed about the same way everyone else around there was dressed, just fairly casual
Cool.
jeans and a t-shirt.
Cool.
They they didn't look at me funny or anything, but
They wanted they wanted the business, no doubt, so that's good.
it's yeah, it's not the kind of place I would generally eat at here at home in Oklahoma. But hey, I was there. I was already in there, and it smelled great, so I decided to go ahead. But
Nice.
yeah, the only recommendation I have then would be McCarthy, Alaska, whatever the name of the restaurant that's right beside the saloon.
We'll put that in the show notes after once we click up here. We'll look it up. We'll put it down in there. We'll
Yeah,
tag
yeah.
them on Instagram too. I'm sure they got an Instagram account. Moving on, Chris Hunbury. Sorry, bro. Bathrooms, food, sleep, breaks, border crossings, wildlife, sketchy areas, keeping busy, entertained, hidden surprises. We've covered all those except for the border crossing and maybe some sketchy areas, possibly wildlife. If you want to touch in on any of those real briefly.
Yeah, border crossing. Uh, if you're planning on doing this, do a lot of research and watch some, do like I done and watch some YouTube videos of border crossings. You can look, get a lot of information on border crossings from RVers and a lot of the van life community. They they seem to have more Canadian border crossing videos than the overlanders have on YouTube. But yeah, Canada, their laws are much different than here, especially being from Oklahoma. I was not able to take a firearms, which I normally carry on me all of the time here in Oklahoma and around most of the U.S. I couldn't even take my pocket knife that I normally carry because
Really?
any any knife that you can open with one hand, whether it is by flipping your wrist, gravity, pushing a button, even a spring-loaded, just regular Kershaw uh, spring assist knife, you cannot take that into Canada. So I actually bought a Swiss Army knife so that I could have a knife legally with me in Canada and could cross the border with it. Uh, there's laws on taking food across the border, the amount of alcohol, tobacco that you can take, but
Hmm.
the biggest thing is stay away from anything that could be used for defense. Pepper spray is a no-go. That will get you turned around at the border. You can, and I did take bear spray with me, which I suppose in a defensive situation against a person, I could and would have used it. How effective it is, I'm sure it will. I'm sure it would deter a person. But now I was stopped at the border and brought inside for questioning on my way into Canada. I called it an interrogation. I went in the room. They asked me to empty my pockets, lift my shirt up so that they could see that I had nothing on my waist, lift my pant legs up so they could see I had nothing on my ankles.
Hmm.
Before they set me
Was it a
down on one side of a table and started asking me questions.
was it a busy day for them or a slow day
It
when you
was
showed
a
up? You
very
said.
it was a very slow day. Uh,
Hmm.
the border crossing north of Kalispell, Montana, that I went across was a fairly small and not as used border crossing. But I just went up to Glacier National Park on my way up, so that was the closest border crossing for me to cross into Canada, go to Banff and Jasper National Parks in Canada. But no, they brought me in and interrogated me for a little while, asked about
Mm.
firearms and any. It was the strangest questions. They asked me if I had anything that I could use for self-defense,
Mm.
and that's something that I had heard about before. And you absolutely do not say, well, yeah, I could use my pocket knife here if I had to open it up, or I could use my pepper spray. They they basically do not allow you to defend yourself, and
Crazy.
they do not want to hear that you might be even willing to defend yourself. But they let me go on my way, and then crossing the border into Alaska from Canada. Whenever I showed up, I had my driver's license and my passport out. They didn't even look at my driver's license. They handed it back to me. They checked my license plate on my truck, checked the number on it, scanned my passport, let me go, and said, "Have a good day." No
Wow.
questions were asked at all. It was seamless crossing back into the United States
Yeah.
uh, from Canada at the northern border anyway.
Well, they just look at your passport or what, and then just wave you on in. Did they try
Yeah,
to
they
search your
looked
vehicle?
at the, nope, no searching it. Now they do have uh, low power X-ray that you drive through. It's it's
Oh,
uh, it's kind of obscured a little bit, but it's they're not trying to hide anything necessarily. But I'd kind of seen from some videos what they look like and what to expect as far as that goes. So I definitely would not try to sneak anything past any of the borders. Uh, that can get you in a lot of trouble and
so
thrown into jail in
I've
another country.
I've heard of people stateside, with their firearms because people like to go up to Alaska and hunt, not necessarily in Canada if if they're not allowed to or whatever, but like an FFL dealer or something like that, they will ship their gun, firearm, what have you, to a licensed dealer in Alaska. Is there any way, or have you heard of any way to transport that to Canada? Probably not a firearm.
Yes, you can. You can. It is possible, from what I understand, to transport a handgun, but it is very difficult.
No.
Handguns are basically not allowed, even for Canadian citizens in
Mm.
Canada. You can transport rifles across fairly easily. They do have to be locked in a case, and the ammo has to be locked in a separate case. Um, you do have to get some permits to be able to cross with them, and you need a reason to be crossing. And
Mm.
self-defense again is not a good reason for them.
Yeah.
So you can even hunt in Canada, but if you are coming from outside of Canada, not a citizen, a Canadian citizen, then from what I understand, you basically have to have a guide, and you have to have the paperwork where uh, you've already booked ahead of time for a hunt with a guide. You have to have all of the permits and uh, things before you can enter, before they'll allow you to enter with
Yeah.
a firearm. You can also transport them across to Canada for the same reason, or to Alaska, sorry, for the same reason. But it's kind of the same way. They really like to know uh, where you're coming from, where you're going to, and how long you're going to be in their country. And
Mm.
they really want to know that you are going to leave their country.
That is wild.
Yeah,
All right. Well,
it was
that was
different.
another question. Yeah, that was a question from Jason Hensley. So yeah, man, appreciate that. Um, we kind of already talked about that. Chris said, "What did you take that you wished you would have left and why?" He said, "Diesel heater." Um, border crossings we've talked about. I think that's about it. Anything else you want to kind of touch on? I'm kind of going through here, proofreading some of this stuff. Oh, here's a good one from Kelly. What part of the journey was least like you had imagined it? So, what part of the journey was least like you had imagined it?
Oh, uh, I would say the Dalton Highway, and from Fairbanks to Dead Horse in Alaska. Uh, both of the longer highways, the Dempster Highway and the Dalton. On there were just some things that happened on both of those trips for me that definitely were not something I did or could plan for. On the Dempster Highway in Canada, just north of Fort McPherson, quite a ways north of the Arctic Circle, there was a fatality traffic accident on the road that had the road shut down for 22 hours. So at that point, I had to make a decision. Do I want to turn around and drive uh, 10 plus hours back and not make it to my destination of the Arctic Ocean? Or do I just want to wait it out? And I ended up waiting it out, and we were stopped along the highway with a lot of other travelers, and it kind of turned into a impromptu party. Not not that we wanted to necessarily celebrate with a fatality accident ahead, but
Sure.
everyone got out of their camper vans and uh, just a different array of overlanding and travel vehicles. And people started cooking stuff up, sharing things, talking to each other,
Mm.
sharing stories in between getting back into our vehicles so that we could get away from the mosquitoes for a while. But that was definitely something that was unexpected and not not something I planned for, but
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily a bad experience. It may have been for a bad
Yeah.
reason. And then
Mm.
on the Dalton Highway in Alaska from Fairbanks to Deadhorse, uh, on the way up, I was taking my time, kind of chilling, seeing everything, pulling over every now and then to get some pictures. You got to get the Instagram pictures at the Arctic Circle and all of that. But on the way back, when I was leaving Deadhorse, I made it about 50 or 60 miles south and saw two people along the side of the road, uh,
Yeah.
cyclists that were working on their bicycles. And when you are that remote in the north, you you kind of stop for everyone, even in the summer. In the
Can can you
from
can you kind of put it in perspective how many miles out you were from civilization? I guess these cyclists were.
there's 60 miles south of Dead Horse. There's not much in Dead Horse, and about 400 miles from
60
Fairbanks,
miles.
which would be the next biggest city. Uh,
Sheesh.
there is one. It's Coldfoot is the name of the town, but it's not really much of a town. It's one uh, truck stop, fuel stop. It's they have a restaurant. It's very basic,
All in one.
very basic, very remote. But that's about halfway between Dead Horse and Fairbanks. But they were at the rate they were riding at, they were at least a week away from Coldfoot, and it would have
Gosh.
taken them another day uh, on bicycle to make it back to Dead Horse, but it turned out one of their bicycles was completely inoperable. I'm not a cyclist, but they had a problem with a derailleur that had broke, and they were dead in the water. They were going to have to turn around, walk the bike back to uh, Dead Horse, get on a plane, and fly back down to Fairbanks to be able to get the parts to repair it, which it turned out the parts were not even in Fairbanks. They had to ship them in from the lower 48 somewhere. But I pulled over to ask if they needed help because in the north, that remote, that's what you do. As I understand it, in the winter, it's actually a crime to not pull over to assist someone
Wow.
uh, in remote areas like that. But I pulled over to ask what they need, and it was two women in their 20s that were along the side of a road in a remote area that
Mm.
they were very thankful that I had stopped, and they were asking if they could hitch a ride back to down to Fairbanks, or at least as close as they could get. And I was like, well, this road doesn't go anywhere but Fairbanks heading this direction, and that's where I'm going. So I'll take you all the way. We disassembled their bicycles, stuffed them in the back of the truck, and I actually had taken the back seats out of my truck, so they swapped out turns of who was going to sit on my clothing bag with my pillow on the back. since there was no seat,
Uh,
whoever was in the back was not running a seat belt and didn't have a real comfortable ride, but made it as good as I could anyway with what we had. And it was about a 12-hour drive,
that's
like I
insane.
said, around 400 miles back south down to Fairbanks. And again, since it was two younger women, I'm not gonna stop and set up camp or anything like that, make them uncomfortable. So I just drove
Yeah.
through for the next 12 hours and dropped them off at a hostel in Fairbanks at about 3 a.m. and uh, followed them on social media to make sure they had made it back up there and can continue on with their
Good.
trip. They were traveling the uh, Trans-Alaskan pipeline from Dead Horse all the way down to Valdez, uh,
Mm,
and it took them, I think, 6 weeks to complete that, and they
gosh.
were bike packing the entire time. Uh,
So have you been in contact with them, or just what? How do you?
yeah,
How do you?
I would message them every once in a while, or they would message me. I know they used my milepost book that I have that has different routes. It has uh,
Very cool.
mile by mile uh, layout of exactly what you're going to be seeing. They took some pictures of that. So they'd ask for a little bit information, and it's like I hit them up and I told them, hey, I know you're going to Valdez, and on the way is McCarthy, the small town that I went over to. I was like, yeah, I know it's a ways over there. It's an extra, day and a half ride for you, but if you get a chance to go over there, it's a cool town. And they ended up going by there, spending a couple days.
Very cool. Man, I love that. I love how you ran into other travelers that were on a different means of traveler, and you rescued them and all that stuff. How cool of a story is that? Then to be able to catch up, all these months later or however long, and see kind of their progress along the way. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and while I was in Coldfoot with them, actually, on the way back down to Fairbanks, we ran into another bike packer who's traveling from Dead Horse all the way to the southernmost point in South America. So he's planning to bike pack
Sheesh.
the entire trip, and I've been keeping up with him uh, on Instagram, uh, keep an eye or just kind of get an idea of how his trip go is going and where he is. And last I checked, I believe he's just now in Vancouver. So he's
Oh
made it quite a
wow.
ways. Yeah, he's about to cross into
Yeah.
the lower 48.
Wow, that's so cool. People out there, man, like that kind of stuff is just like mind blowing to me. I love it though. I love how we're all different and people get motivated and stuff off different things. I think it's great. But dude, we have surpassed an hour, and I think this is a world record for the longest episode of Budget Overland podcast. So let's see here if we can get some cheering going on. That's that's pretty cool, and that was pretty cheesy. But I mean, if you have it and you don't use it, you might lose it. So, is there anything that you want to tell everyone out there in podcast world if they're considering doing a long distance overland travel trip like this? I mean, 32 days, 14,700 miles. As far as maintenance and all that stuff goes, if you don't mind touching on that, and then kind of go back into, kind of encouraging others to kind of do something similar.
As far as maintenance goes, I just made sure and went through everything, changed all of my fluids, and double checked everything well before my trip, so I had time to put a few miles on any of the maintenance that was done to make sure I didn't screw something up and it was going to fail on me. Put new tires on, put new brakes on before the trip, and I had nothing go wrong with me the entire time. I did do an oil change on the road. Uh, Again, since it was 14,700 miles round trip for me, I needed at least one oil change. So I did do that. And then once I got back down into Washington, I stopped in Yakima and stopped by the old discount tire and had rotate and balance because I had couple tires that were slightly out of balance from all the miles of wear on them. But no, as soon as I got back, it got everything looked over very closely to see if anything had worn or damaged, and I didn't find any problems with anything. Just basic maintenance. The truck has 160,000 miles on it now, but that's just getting broke
That's
in for a Toyota.
that's a lot of adventuring, man. I love it. That's so cool. That is so cool.
And as
Well,
far as other
dude, any
people,
words?
as far as other
Yeah, go
people
ahead.
that are thinking about doing it, do your research, but don't pin yourself down to an exact route. Try to research everything along the way, and when you get a chance, ask the locals for what's something interesting to see or do in the area. Um, it's it's kind of overwhelming whenever you first start looking into it, but give yourself plenty of time beforehand to do the research, uh, and just don't take it too serious whenever you're on the road. That's what I left myself very open to go wherever I wanted if I found something that looked interesting to be able to go do that.
Like listening to someone's ham radio and suggesting a killer hiking trail.
Absolutely.
I I love it, man. All right, dude. So we have surpassed the record, and if anyone wants to try to break this record, you can send me an email. Budgetoverlandpodcast at gmail.com. We'll get you on the show. Let's see how what kind of a cool story you could share with us. But man, Cody, appreciate you coming on, man. We probably could have talked another 2 hours for sure. But yeah, let's have you back on the show sometime. Maybe talk about a Colorado trip or something fun like that, something different, and share your wisdom. Are you gonna go to Rendezvous in the Ozarks?
I am trying to. I'm planning on it.
Okay.
Not sure yet if everything's going to work out with the family for me to be able to make it over there then. But yeah, I want to get out there and see you again and meet some other new people.
Yeah, man, that'd be fun. So if you guys are going to Rendezvous in the Ozarks, be sure to check out the BO Meetup Hangout. It's from 7 p.m. till whenever. BYOB. It's going to be in front of the main stage. I've got a lot of free giveaways. Once you show up, we'll give you a ticket. So anyway, Cody, appreciate you guys. Go check him out on Instagram, Red Dirt Taco. It's at Red Dirt Taco, all one word. Is that the only social you've got? Is that where you want people to go find you?
That's pretty much the only place that I do much, and I don't do a lot on social media. But if you go over there and you want to ask me anything about any of my trips or about planning your own trip to Alaska or Canada, I'm more than willing to answer whatever I can.
Very cool. Cody, appreciate you coming on the show, everyone. We'll see you back here Monday for Overland Shenanigans. Bye-bye.